Hello and welcome to this week's plan review. The information for this plan was submitted by a group member in our Facebook group. So as always, we appreciate the contribution. This video provides general education. Nothing shared in this video should be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice. And don't act on any information you see in this video without first consulting your tax, legal, or investment advisor. So this is a company down south with about 18 million in plan assets with a little over 300 participants. We're going to review the service model, what we know of it, the fee structure, the investment choices, plan design, benchmarking, and then at the end, we'll give it an overall score. So the service model is always the most difficult for us to figure out. It's not anything that's written in any of the plan documents or the IRS filing. So usually that just comes with a conversation from a participant or business owner or somebody in HR. And the conversation I had with the group member, they said there wasn't a lot in the last 12 months. So some of that, considering the environment we're in, we can give them a bit of a pass on that. Obviously, a lot of people weren't holding a ton of group meetings and things like that. What she did tell us is they recently sent out a link of some videos, basic financial planning videos that people could log on to or watch sort of at their own pace. So that's an additional added value, but not a lot of hands-on or one-to-one communication or advice in the last year or so. So one of the things I look at first is to see how the plan's grown. If it's a plan that's grown rapidly, you need to make sure that the fees and the services match up with what's appropriate for a plan of this size. So this is a plan that's doubled in size over the last 10 years or so. And the number of participants has increased too. So this is probably a growing business. So you've got new contributions, you've got company match in there, and you've also got a considerable amount of market growth in there. So we looked at that structure. What we found was in calendar year 2014, February, they made a switch from John Hancock as their record keeper to Securian. So Securian's been in there for about 7 years now. A lot of the funds are the same. There's been a few changes, which is about appropriate. I mean, you don't want to see the investment lineup turnover every year, but you don't want to see it remain stagnant for 10 years. So we looked at the investment lineup and where the assets were in 2014 and where the assets are now. Pretty similar. You see a lot of the funds that were leading back then are also leading now too. They made a change from the PIMCO Total Return Fund to the MetWest Total Return Bond and made a couple other small changes along the way. When you get into the fee structure, one of the things that sort of jumped off the page at me with this plan is what they list for investment options is accurate, but there's a wrapper on that. So when you look at a fund like the Vanguard Intermediate Term Index Fund, so in the real world, for lack of a better phrase, you'd be able to get that fund for 7 basis points in the wild. In this plan, that fund costs 57 basis points because there's a 50 basis point wrapper on there that goes to pay plan expenses, which is record keeping, administration, any advice. So there's no additional hard dollar fees to the individuals. Everything is sort of wrapped in that mutual fund or that structure. So to the untrained eye or somebody who's looking at this quickly, they can say, well, this is great. I've got Vanguard funds in here. I've got American Century at the least expensive share class. I've got Dodge & Cox. I've got a really good lineup here. And they do from an investment standpoint. But it's important for participants to understand that they don't own Dodge & Cox stock fund. They owned a fund that invests 100% in Dodge & Cox stock fund. So there's nothing illegal about the structure or nothing wrong with it. It's just you have to understand what you're in and how those fees are structured within this plan. So Vanguard, we gave that example. Dodge & Cox stock within this plan is 92 basis points. On the outside, you'd be able to get that fund for 52 basis points. So you say, wait a minute, why was 50 basis points added on to the Vanguard fund, but only 40 onto Dodge & Cox? And the reason is Dodge & Cox has revenue sharing already built into that. So they don't need to add on 50, they just need to add on 40. And then 50 is going back to the administration of the plan. So that's the way it is with American Century also. So They're more structured like Vanguard. There's no revenue sharing in there. So it's, again, another 50 basis point add-on. So that's, again, something that's important to look at. From a design perspective, there's a lot to like about this plan. So you're eligible after 3 months. It is a safe harbor plan where the structure is that they match 100% of the first 3 and then 50% of the next 2. So if you put in 3, they put in 3. If you put in 5, they put in 4. If you put in 20%, they're still putting in that 4. So that's where the company caps out there. There is a discretionary profit sharing contribution. So you're eligible for that after you've worked 1,000 hours. And if you complete the end of that calendar year, you're eligible. The profit sharing piece, you're fully vested after 6 years. The regular safe harbor match, you're vested immediately, which is nice. And obviously all the employee contributions, you're always vested in right from the start. The investment lineup, aside from sort of the way it's structured with a wrapper, there's a lot to like here too. So you have index funds in all the major categories. You have a good mix of actively managed mutual funds where there's a portfolio manager making selections. And then what we call passive funds where they're just simply following a list. There's no proprietary funds in there except for the stable value or guaranteed account. That means that the record keeper doesn't have any affiliation with the investments that are in the lineup. So that's something we like to see that's pretty clean. It's not uncommon for the record keeper to be running the stable value fund. So you do run into that a little bit. But again, that's really the only proprietary fund in here. There isn't any sort of wacky or crazy investments in here. No sector funds except for the real estate fund. So, we got to have a debate whether that's, appropriate in a 401k plan, but there's not a lot of assets in here and it's not used in any of the models. There's no specific target date fund lineup in here. So what they do is a little bit different. What they have is they have portfolios that are based on people's age, and they're put together with investments that are in that fund lineup. So for example, if you're 29 or younger, you're not going to have any investment in any of the bond funds, and you're going to be spread across 4 different funds: the DFA Large Cap Value, Large Cap Growth, Vanguard Small Cap Index, and International. So it's a very streamlined model setup. There's not a lot of, there's no difference between growth and value funds in here. There's no mid cap. So it's a little bit simplistic for my liking, but the good news is with these model portfolios, there's no additional managed account fee or anything like that. So if you go into one of these models, you're paying the same as if you would put together this allocation yourself. So that part's nice to see. We always take a look at some benchmarking. So this is from a company called Brightscope, and they rate all the portfolio or the retirement plans based on a score of 1 to 100. So in their peer group, they're under the highest, obviously they're 72, whereas the highest is 87. Their average peer group is 73. So again, you don't base 100% of your analysis on these, but it's something that's nice to throw in there to give another sort of score as we review these plans. The Brightscope system takes into account all the information that's on the audit report and the 5500. They don't factor in too much of the service model in there because, again, that's sort of hard to pull that information anywhere. It's not on any of the documents. There's also, there's a lot we don't know about this plan. Like we said, the specifics of the service agreement. And again, we sort of take that with a grain of salt the last 12 months. So we don't know what the broker or what the advisor is, supposed to be doing here. Is it quarterly meetings? Is it annual? Is it all virtual? So that part's always a bit of a mystery. We don't know what sort of fiduciary outsourcing is taking place here. So with a plan this size, you'd hope that they have their 316, which is the administrative fiduciary responsibility that handles a lot of the day-to-day operations. So loans and terminations, hardships, if they have that, rollovers. You'd hope that that's outsourced. Same thing on the investment management side. So we don't know if there's a 338 investment manager there that would handle the fiduciary responsibility of making the investment selections. And the other thing we don't know is the folks that are in front of the participants here working with the employees day to day. We don't know if they're working in the best interest of the plan participants. That's something that we like to see, is that you're working under that fiduciary standard. As an employer, you should always be looking to put people in front of your employees who are working their best interest. I know that seems sort of obvious, but the phrasing is important. So as you're reviewing your own plan, make sure that that's the case. Overall, the service model, again, we don't know a ton about, but based on my conversations with the participant, I'm giving it a B. The plan design, there's a lot to like here. It's a very generous safe harbor, discretionary contribution, profit sharing we like. The investment lineup, again, they plug all the boxes. They have a really nice lineup in here. The only thing that takes it away from the A down to an A minus is just the fact that it's got that wrapper around it. And that's where we go into the fees. So the fees overall are not that bad. If you're in an index fund, you're completely in this plan at, between 55 and 60 basis points, which isn't that bad. We just like to see them structured maybe a little bit differently. We don't know if the employer is paying any costs on the outside. They may be writing a check to some service providers. There's always the possibility that the employer could write a check for the whole thing, which they're not doing here. So there are some areas for improvement, but overall, I'd give this plan a B+. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to have a say in what type of plans get reviewed, or even want to have your own plan review, be sure to check us out on our Facebook group. You can also vote on which investments get reviewed on each Mutual Fund Monday. If you're watching this in the Facebook group, be sure to check us out on our YouTube channel. There's some other investment reviews that we're going to post there that won't be part of the Facebook group. So thanks for logging on today. I appreciate anybody that's sent me the plan reviews. We'll get to them. And if you'd like to have some more information about the services we provide, feel free to reach out. Thanks.